Most of the engineering leaders that I interview will say that a critical factor to their success was having the right mentors. But they never tell us how to find them or how to get the most out of your mentors. Well, in this episode of the Civil Engineering CEO, I have with me Bill Lloyd. Bill's a licensed professional engineer. He's also the president of Great West Engineering. And Bill's going to talk about how mentors have helped him, but he's going to give specifics. Are they formal? Are they informal? How do you ask the right questions? And how do you become a great mentor? He's also going to talk about some of the other aspects of his career that really helped him in going from technical to manager to leader. Now, before we dive in with Bill, a quick word from our sponsor, Tensar. Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode. All right, now I'd like to welcome my guest onto the show for today. Bill Lloyd is a licensed professional engineer and president of Great West Engineering, Inc. Bill, I want to welcome you into the Civil Engineering CEO.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to our visit this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill and I had the chance to meet at the AECHR Summit a couple months back in Boston, and I was happy to connect with him there and glad that we were able to continue the conversation here because I think he's got some great stuff to share from his career journey, which is kind of the first thing that I want to talk about here, Bill, is take us a little bit through your career. How'd you get to where you are today, at that level of your career? And also, just talk about some of the facilitators of like professional development for you that helped to grow you through your career.
Sure. So, I'm coming up on 30 years in the engineering industry. Been blessed with fantastic mentors throughout my career. Started with a fantastic firm here in Montana. Couple internships with them in college. Started with them right out of school. Large firm, really well run. But I was young, short-sighted, and couldn't quite envision a career path at that point, and had the opportunity to join a smaller firm that did everything. It was really exciting. Joined them in 1995, and my supervisor at that firm turned out to be one of my most influential career mentors, and he was really instrumental in my development as a technical engineer, as a businessman, a leader, and as a person, really. I did take about a 5-year detour away from consulting engineering, moved into a related AEC field, but away from consulting. And I was blessed in that position as well, where I had a fantastic mentor, really exposed me to marketing, business development, business operations, relationship building. I've been blessed throughout to have great coworkers, great mentors. Been here at Great West Engineering for it's 18 years we've been in our current form, and it's been great. I'm surrounded with great partners, great mentors. I've had a lot of involvement in industry organizations at the state and national level that have allowed me to network with my peers. You just mentioned the conference in Boston, the HR Summit, where we met. That was fantastic. It was great crossing paths with you, but it's been a great career. And, I've advanced from project engineer to project manager. It's been a pretty typical advancement. And for, about the last 4.5, 5 years, I've served as the president of Great West Engineering.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about mentoring, because I do think it's something that I hear a lot from, professionals in your position, that it was so key in helping them to grow. But, we don't necessarily hear much more than that. So take us a little bit inside of some of those mentoring relationships in terms of like, what does it look like? Like, you call someone up when you need some help. Do you meet them once in a while? For those out there, those are like younger professionals that maybe really want to get a mentor and kind of leverage a mentoring relationship. What advice can you give them in kind of having that right relationship?
That's a great question, Anthony. And many of my mentoring relationships have developed organically. Many of them have been my supervisors, and they've been very generous in their time and in sharing of their knowledge and helping me identify areas that I need to work on and to strengthen. As far as how to establish a mentoring relationship, I've been involved in many. I work closely with our business unit managers across Great West, and we meet depending on their level of experience, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, maybe it's only semi-annually, and we talk about where they're where they're struggling, where they could use some support, how their business units are functioning, how their staff are performing, and really where I can support them. And there's a mentoring aspect to that. I think it has to be embraced by both parties. It's great to go out and look for a mentor, but you have to make sure that your mentor is willing to be a mentor. That's one of the critical items. But I think I would encourage everyone to be open to those relationships, be willing to try new challenges. There's a lot of folks out there that are willing to share their knowledge. And as I mentioned before, I've been blessed with many of them throughout my career. But it's always been a two-way street. They ask a lot of me. I do my best to deliver and perform. And in return, they share their knowledge. They help me grow. And as I mentioned, it's not just professionally. They help me grow as a person, and they help me grow my network. And as you meet new people, in they may be your competitors, they may be your clients. They have so much to share, and I found that most people are very willing to share what they know, and it's just been a great experience for me over the years.
Yeah, I think what you said is really the key, and why I wanted to go a little bit deeper on this is because I think there are a lot of people out there that are willing to share. And so as the professional who maybe needs some guidance, you have to think about that and maybe be intentional about reaching out to people and asking the right questions. And because I think that, you want to be a sponge early on in your career. You want to soak up as much information, as much knowledge as you can. And yes, there's resources out there online and things like that, but there's nothing like talking to someone who's done it and getting advice from them and getting, like you said, it could help you personally as well. Just, growing your confidence, becoming a better person overall, which, spills over outside of work as well. So I think that's important. And then I think on the flip side of it, as someone who has the ability now to become a mentor, right, or to share some of that advice, it kind of, I think, is a really powerful thing to reach out to people across your organization and try to provide that mentorship where it makes sense, and give them share some of the wisdom maybe you've picked up. I mean, listen, we all gain knowledge through different ways, right? We made mistakes and we learned, and maybe we can share some of that with them so they don't necessarily make the same mistakes. Although sometimes you want to make some mistakes on your own to kind of get some lumps and figure it out. But nonetheless, I just think mentoring is such a powerful thing. And I do think that there are so many people out there that are willing to help you in your career. Sometimes you just need to make sure that you're asking for that help and seeking those people out,
I couldn't agree more. And you've mentioned, you get deeper in your career, and I don't know that you ever get away from seeking mentors and seeking input from other people. But as you gain more experience, you find more people that are looking to you to be a mentor. And I think one of the keys there is you have to be approachable and you have to be accessible. And accessible and approachable aren't the same thing. I mean, you can keep your door open, but if you're not approachable, it's, people will be intimidated, and you've got to make the effort to go out and meet people and develop relationships with them, whether they're in or out of your organization, and make sure that they feel comfortable coming to you with questions or seeking advice in order to really kick off that mentor-mentee relationship.
And Bill, as president of a company, are you still out there seeking mentorship and guidance where you can at this stage of your career?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, Anthony. I mentioned I'm very involved in state and local industry organizations. I participate in peer groups regularly. particularly at the national level, but at the state level, and we share our challenges and we talk about them. It's rare that you encounter a challenge that someone else hasn't faced as well, and the solution may not be out there, but you can work together. Or if they have already worked through it, they can offer some fantastic advice as to how to approach it. There's always new challenges that we're finding in our industry, whether it's on the business side or the technical side. And I've just found that working with my peers across the country, it's a continual learning experience. And it's just fantastic getting to know everyone and develop those relationships along the way.
Yeah, for sure. And I asked you that question specifically because I do think that that's a good example, right? If leaders at the highest levels of companies are looking for more mentorship and guidance, I mean, that just shows everybody that your career is just a continuous improvement journey, like from the beginning all the way till the end. Like, right when you're ready to retire, you should still be learning, in my opinion. So I think it's great to hear that from you, just for those professionals out there, knowing that it's not like one day you're going to like turn off the mentor. Like, hey, I don't need mentors anymore. It doesn't really work like that. It's like a continuous thing. So Bill, let's talk a little bit about your journey kind of within Great West. You've been there a long time. And I know most people that I talk to that get into those higher level leaderships, president, CEO, high level executive, it wasn't necessarily a goal of theirs. Like as an engineer, when they were doing engineering, something happened over that period of time where there was an opportunity. So maybe you could take us a little bit inside of that decision for you, the opportunity to take over as president. What did that look like for you? And what was that whole process like?
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Anthony. I think, we go to school to be engineers and we want to solve problems. We want to solve technical problems. For myself, I'm a civil engineer by trade. I love infrastructure. I love roads, bridges, water, wastewater, solid waste. I've had an opportunity to work in all those areas throughout my career. Now, in my current role as president, I don't deal much with solving infrastructure problems. I'm running a business now, and it's interesting, and it's been great. So I started off and really had no aspirations of running a company. I loved what I was doing. I loved my clients. We work with a lot of local governments. They're just regular people, right? And it was a lot of fun working with them. Um, I joined this firm in 1995. We've had a little different path to where we are today. The firm was originally started in 1984 by two partners, and they owned the business until 1999. As I mentioned, I joined in 95 as a project engineer.
Mm.
It was a big adventure back then. The company sold in 1999. One of the partners wanted to retire, and that was their transition plan. So we sold to a regional firm, and that was we're about 12 people maybe when we sold, and a regional firm was probably 350 or so, and they're a great company, but it was a difficult transition for me. Change is hard, right? And I guess
Sure.
I didn't adapt very well. But I left for 5 years, as I mentioned before, and moved into an adjacent industry. Wound up being a blessing. And in about 5 years down the road, the office bought itself back from this regional firm, and I had the opportunity to rejoin the firm when they bought themselves back, and that's when Great West Engineering, in its current form, was born in 2005, and I was there as the business unit manager for transportation, and it was great. We grew the company from, I don't know, we were 23, 24 people probably about that point, and we grew until in about 2019 we were about 60 people, and that's when I assumed the role of president. And now we're around 100 staff, got about 5 offices,
Wow.
and I've been in the role for going on 5 years, and it's been great. And I'm learning all the time. I will say I've been very blessed, Anthony, in that the past president of Great West Engineering, the original president, is still here in a part-time role. He's there as a resource. He's my biggest supporter, and he's always there to assist and offer advice and take on tasks in support of Great West, in support of myself, and that's really been helpful in as I assumed the role of president, and we've worked to grow this company over the past 5 years.
That's great. Wow. I mean, that's really rapid growth that you're experiencing for sure, which is awesome, and something that we're hearing a lot around the industry. So the fact that you are growing means you're constantly probably evaluating new hires, you're evaluating, individuals within the organization for growth positions and new opportunities. So all that being said, what do you think maybe is one of the most important skills or a couple of skill sets for civil engineering professionals kind of to have in the landscape today, Bill, being that you deal with so many different professionals at different levels of the firm?
Sure. So that's a great question. The easy one, Anthony, is communication skills. Uh, as a leader, you have to be able to clearly articulate your strategy and your purpose, where the company's going and why, and ensure that everyone understands it and feels a part of it. And it's also important to provide transparency for your corporate decisions and operations, so that everyone really understands what's going on and they don't feel like it's a black box that they're working for. So communication is really important. But on top of that, particularly in today's world, I think it's really important to be flexible.
Mm.
And, you come out of the pandemic, right? And maybe the world's changed. The world changed while we were in it. People, if you weren't working remotely before, you were working remotely for at least a period, and that required change. Our younger generation is incredible, but they have different goals and work styles, and they're going to give you an amazing amount of effort, and they're highly efficient and they're highly productive, but they may not want the same thing that the Gen Xers want. I'm a Gen X, and I operate differently. And we still got some baby boomers around here, and they operate differently. And I think the important thing is to be flexible in how we accommodate their goals and their workplace preferences, because what they offer the firm in return is really incredible.
Yeah.
And maybe one last thing is, and I touched on this before, is be accessible and be approachable, and be willing to have those conversations and be open-minded, because I've also found that this younger generation is not afraid to speak up and offer input on what they believe is important and how we can improve our processes. And if we're willing to accept that and evaluate it and work to implement it when it makes sense, we're a better company for it.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's funny, you mentioned like communication, was always kind of like the common answer to that question, but it's amazing that with all the AI and the apps and all these things, that's still the answer, right? Like all these years later, like you just need to be a really good communicator if you want to be a great leader in the industry, which tells you as an engineer, if you're listening to this, that's a skill set that you really want to put a lot of effort and energy into, right? Actually be able to speak, communicate, articulate clearly. But I do also think that flexibility piece is important, because everybody has different perspectives today, different ways of doing things, different ways of being productive. And I think we need to kind of be sensitive to that and really try to leverage them all, quite frankly, if we want to grow together and be sustainable. And it's funny, a simple example of that is my daughter is going through the college application process right now. And I like printing stuff out and reviewing it. So I was helping her draft some emails, and I said, do you want me to print that out for you so you could take a look at it? She's like, no, why would you print it out? Like, why do I want a piece of paper, So I think definitely, thinking of the different generations and how people like to work is important, because at the end of the day, Bill's firm went from 60 to 100 pretty quickly, like a lot of firms are doing in this industry, which means that you're going to have to hire a lot of different people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, coming from different companies. So that ability to be flexible and kind of bring people together, I think, is critical if companies want to kind of grow sustainably going forward. It's just, you're going to have to be able to be flexible, period. So
I completely agree.
So
And
let's.
it's funny you
Oh, okay.
brought up sorry, I didn't mean to hijack
No,
the
no, go ahead.
conversation there, Anthony, but you bring up the paper and printing things out. And I come from that generation, right, where we print things out and we mark it up and we give it to people. And I do that. And my younger generation goes, that is not very sustainable or climate friendly. And we'd appreciate it if you would handle everything electronically. And so that's one of those things that I took back and I said, well, if that's important to you, then I can work on that. So now I mark everything up electronically and I send it to them electronically, and we're not wasting that paper anymore. And they're happy, and they're right too. It's just a more sustainable way to go. But it's interesting how the different generations prefer to work.
Perfect example of flexibility. um, so let's talk a little bit about skill sets within a firm. It's really important, as we know, to have good technical skill sets, right? And then also those non-technical skill sets like the communication, like the ability to speak, ability to lead people. How do you kind of try to balance the development of those skill sets at Great West with your team members, trying to help them to be able to not just be technically savvy, but be able to be also leaders of people where they need to be?
You're full of great questions today, Anthony. That's another good one. So maybe I'll take a quick step back for how we handle things at Great West. So every employee here is allocated 40 hours of professional development per year. And so that's built into your annual, we call it a GNA plan, right? So 40 hours a year minimum. So there's some folks that need more than that. Maybe we're sending them off to a specialized training course. It's a 2-week course. Maybe they need 80 hours. And we're going to plan for that. At the beginning of the year, you work with your supervisor. You put together a professional development plan that allocates how you're going to use those 40 hours. And it's not right down to the hour. We may have 20 hours of it that just says local training as agreed upon by the employee and their supervisor. Some folks may have it fully booked out. When you're early in your career, a lot of it is technical focused. It's enhancing your technical skills. You're highly utilized. You're really working on projects. As you develop in your career, a lot of it becomes more, could be soft skills, could be leadership, and you're really working with the support of your supervisor to put a plan together that best suits your goals, but is mutually beneficial to both the employee and the firm. It's the responsibility of the employee to follow through on that professional development plan, but both the employee and the supervisor are evaluated on that at the end of the year to make sure that employees are continuing to develop themselves and receive that continuing education, because that's going to make them a better person, a better engineer, and because of that, we're going to be a better firm. We also have in-house training every year. Some of it's limited to project managers. Maybe it's project manager specific training. A lot of times it's company-wide training. So this past year, we had 2 days of training for all staff, and it was focused on the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging was a day, and supervisor training and how to interact with your supervisor was another day of training. It was fantastic. In past years, we've had communication training, conflict management training, public speaking skills. So we really try to offer that company-wide, but the need for technical versus non-technical and the soft skills training kind of varies by where you are in your career. And I think the final aspect is we have monthly staff meetings, and we always have a staff member present. It could be a case study on a project. It could be a safety presentation, but we have a staff member present at every staff meeting, and they have 15, 20 minutes to get up in front of all of our offices. They're in front of face-to-face with the staff in whatever office they're presenting from, but they're also on video conference with all of our other offices, and they have the opportunity to get up there and work on their communication and public speaking skills. And so we're continually offering that type of opportunity to not only improve your technical skills, but also improve your soft skills, become a better communicator, become more comfortable speaking in front of people. And we also really encourage all employees, regardless of experience, to get involved in your local industry organizations. So we have a Helena Engineers Club here in Helena, Montana. We encourage the younger staff to get involved there. Maybe it's something like Toastmasters. If they're uncomfortable speaking, and we really encourage it, we'll pay the dues, we'll give them time off. They can use their professional development for that, and really try to become a more well-rounded person and engineer.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love to hear those things. I mean, I started the Engineering Management Institute years ago because I felt like there was a little bit of a deficiency of professional development support within firms at that time, at least for their professionals. So I'm thrilled to hear that Great West seems to be extremely professional development friendly when it comes to your team members. And I think it's a great thing in two ways. One, you're showing, of course, your people that you want to invest in their development by giving them that 40 hours and having them put that plan together with their supervisor. But I think on the flip side of it too, it's an accountability factor for them as well, because if your company is going to give you those hours and allow you to put together a plan, you have to take action on it and find the right courses, find what you need, go through those courses and things of that nature. So I think it really is good for both parties because you're supporting them, but you also want to see that they're going to engage in that development. And so it really is beneficial. And I would say that all of you out there should really be thinking about a professional development plan for yourself, whether or not your company provides it, but just thinking about, to Bill's point, the skills that you need at each level of your career. Because if you want to become a project manager, you're going to need to start to learn about some of those PM skills. You're going to need to start interacting with more people and your clients, and you're going to want to polish some of those communication skills. So you really have to think about that in your career as an engineer. Where do I start needing to up some of these other skill sets? And that's really, really important as you go through your career.
I couldn't agree more, Anthony, and always staying ahead of where you're at and always improving yourself. Engineers are famous for stating, I was too busy to participate in my professional development this year.
Yeah.
And it's probably real, but it's not a good enough excuse. You always need to be planning for the future and looking where you want to be and helping yourself get there. And we'll help you, but you've got to help yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I hear people use that excuse, which I hear all the time too, that I'm too busy, I share with them this proverb that I love, which is, if you don't stop to fill up the car with gas, eventually you're going to run out. Right. So you keep saying, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I can't sharpen my skills. And then, you're going to see your career get stagnant because you're not able to manage projects effectively because you didn't take time to do the PM course or whatever the case may be. So if you're out there and you kind of have that mentality right now that you're just too busy to think about anything else, it's going to come back. And at some point, you're going to kind of hit a wall in your career if you're not developing those other skill sets. So you have to make the time.
It's a great analogy. Couldn't agree more.
So, Bill, you're in this position as a leader in the organization. And when you get to a leadership position like that, certainly, there are more eyes on you. Your team's looking at you for advice, guidance. If something happens in the industry or something like a COVID happens, they're looking at, say, how's Bill reacting to this? What's Bill going to give us the message? So my question to you is, I think it's important not to kind of underreact or overreact as a leader in certain situations like that. And I'm wondering how you handle situations like that in terms of just trying to stay even keeled and, be able to work through it in a way where you can kind of, make your team members feel, confident and comfortable that, okay, we as a firm, we can handle this type of thing.
Sure. So you're full of great questions today. I do think it's important. You'd mentioned being even keeled, and I think consistency is really important in leadership. I think people are looking for predictability. People are looking for those that, when faced with a challenge, work to get through the challenge rather than pointing fingers as to what created the challenge. Let's all move forward instead of looking back, right? So I think a lot of that comes to laying the groundwork ahead of time. And, I keep coming back to be accessible, be approachable, because if that's the case, you're developing a rapport with your staff and they really get to know you, and you got to get out and spend time with them. But maybe more directly to your point, I think the buzzword everybody uses these days is emotional intelligence, right? I look at that and I go, well, you really have to know yourself, and you have to know what your triggers are. And once you understand your triggers, I think you can manage them, and it allows you to take a step back and reframe a real confrontational or controversial conversation and create meaningful dialogue. But I think it's always important to, and you mentioned underreacting. I don't think anybody's looking for leadership that just says it is too lackadaisical.
Right.
They're looking for someone to steer the ship, and especially when the waters are rough and everything's blowing up around you. How are you going to get through this? So um, it's a tough balance, but I do think it begins with knowing yourself. We have, a solid set of core values at Great West Engineering, and we have what I consider to be a real strong purpose statement. And when we're dealing with challenges, we oftentimes go back to our core values, and they're very simple. It's client commitment, empowered employees, and quality solutions. And there's a lot that goes into that. But we'll ask ourselves, well, is this good for our clients? And is this good for our employees? And is this going to help us deliver a better product? And if we're really keeping those in mind, it helps us be consistent in our decision making and helps us make decisions that maybe aren't great in the short-term interests of Great West Engineering, but certainly are better for us in the long term of Great West Engineering. And we have a purpose that says we're going to improve the world that we live in, and we're going to create a sense of community for our employees. And if we've got everybody pulling in that direction, everybody wants to build more resilient, sustainable infrastructure. That's what we're about at Great West Engineering. But we want to create a home for our staff. I tell people at our staff meetings all the time, I want everybody in this room to retire from Great West Engineering. I want you to be here forever until you don't feel like working anymore. And I think when we keep our core values and our purpose in mind, it allows us to be consistent in our decision making. And when we understand ourselves, we can really have meaningful conversations without overreacting. But our core values and our purpose keep us from underreacting.
That's great. No, I love that a lot. And I would imagine too, a lot of the mentoring over the years has helped you, to be able to, kind of manage the highs and lows, because you've probably seen other people do it. I mean, this doesn't happen overnight, right? I mean, this is years of watching people and learning from other people as well, I would imagine.
I love that you bring that up, Anthony, because one of my most influential mentors would always counsel me to have more patience. I've always been a hard driver. I've always been let's make a decision right now. And if it's not the right decision, well, let's change our mind and change direction and keep plowing forward. And by taking a little bit more time, and you can't take a lot of time. If you're going to lead an organization, you have to make decisions. Sure. But a little patience, and especially patience in working with and understanding other individuals and their needs and where they're coming from is really important.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. So your firm is headquartered in Montana. I know it's not the most heavily populated area in the United States, but you're growing fast. So talk about how your location kind of affects your hiring strategy. How does that look for you as you try to grow in your region?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Montana is the fourth largest state by landmass, and we're the 42nd largest state by population.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of infrastructure. As you could imagine, it takes a lot of roads and bridges to get around our state. We've got a lot of small towns out there that have water, wastewater needs, solid waste needs, and so forth. And we need a lot of engineers to address that. We've got 3 institutions in Montana that have engineering programs. We have a larger institution, one of our flagships, and we've got a couple smaller ones, and they simply and they're all extremely good institutions. They put out high quality graduates, but they're in nationwide demand. I mean, we've got all the national firms coming in here trying to take our students. They love Montana kids. So we're competing with them. So we're not getting all of the students. We can't keep them in state. So it's been tough, and we've got offices in Montana, Idaho, Washington, which has allowed us to build a platform in those states as well. So we recruit from those areas. We recruit from our adjacent states. So we're probably actively recruiting at the college level in 5 or 6 states, trying to make sure that we cast a broad enough net that we can fill our entry-level positions. Our more senior positions, if we're recruiting for a mid-level, I mean, they're the unicorns, right? You just can't find them. And there's truth to that. They're hard to come by, but we got a fantastic HR department, a fantastic employee recruitment staff. They're constantly refining their processes and working to keep us at the forefront of whether it's social media, or some other avenue or vehicle that's going to get our name out there and allow us to, come to the attention of these engineers who may be looking to make a move. And the ones we really love are the ones that are from Montana and are looking to come back to Montana. We love those because they're changing employers for the right reason. They want to come home and they may not be able to do so with their current employer. And we love that kind. We love to hire local staff because if they're close to family, it seems like they stick around. And so that's what we really look for as well. But it's tough. It's a tough environment. It's been tough for probably 5 or 6 years. COVID made it even tougher, the pandemic. But if you got to be aggressive, you got to be thinking ahead, and you can find good people, but you have to work hard.
Yeah, and I would imagine, Bill, like if you have an office in Washington, let's just say theoretically, and you're able to recruit maybe some more engineers in that area than Montana, the ability to kind of share work across your offices is going to become more important as you grow. Is that something that you look at doing a little bit here and there for work sharing and resourcing and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Another great point. So we've really charged our chief operating officer with the efficiency of our work share program between offices. And it's really important for us to, we call it municipal engineering, but it's our water, wastewater, some storm water in there. We've got those units in all of our offices. And I don't know that any of them have a shortage of work right now, but some of them have a real overload and are reaching out to the other offices to see what kind of resources might be out there to assist during these peaks. Montana is a northern state, and so our construction season is not year round. We probably have a solid 6 months, probably closer to 9 months of construction season each year, and we're constantly bringing on resident project representatives to go out there and oversee the construction and ensure that the standards are being upheld and the contract documents are being followed. And we're shifting resources amongst offices. The tools we have these days, the video conferencing and being able to share screens and as we mentioned before, we can mark up plans using PDF editors and share those back and forth. Many of our programs are in the cloud now, and so we can work on a common model, and it really enhances that. But it's a constant. It's an issue that's constantly front of mind for us, is how do we improve that? And then the other issue with work sharing among offices is how do you build those relationships? It's really easy if your workstation's right outside the office of your project manager, or you're working on a project with another staff and they're right over your workstation wall and you can talk back and forth, but it's much more difficult when you're working with someone in a different office. How do we get them together? How do they build rapport and have that camaraderie that really improves project productivity? And so we're constantly looking for ways to get our staff to other offices, spend a little bit of time there, and how to get our entire company together at least annually so that they can meet and really get to know each other on a human level, not just a business level.
Yeah, that cohesiveness is really, really important for sure.
It is, yeah.
So, Bill, any last pieces of advice for aspiring engineers who want to become better leaders and maybe progress their careers in the leadership side of things?
That's a tough question. I mean, it seems as though in my career, I don't know that I've had any one common theme that carried me through, other than I've been super fortunate to have those mentors that were generous with their time, generous with their knowledge, and really were committed to helping me improve myself. And I think that was where I really benefited throughout my career. And they were always pushing me to expand my skill set and take on new challenges. So I guess if I'm going to leave with any parting thoughts, it's what I've learned from my mentors. And it would be good leaders cultivate more good leaders. And so always be looking at those around you and helping lift them up and helping prepare them to take on new roles. And maybe really surround yourself with good people and, people that are going to support you when times are challenging, but you need to support them too. And I've been fortunate here at Great West Engineering and all throughout my career, I've been surrounded by fantastic, not just engineers, but fantastic people. And it's made going to work enjoyable every day. And if maybe one last thought would be, always put the people first. And if you support your people, they're going to take great care of your clients and the business is going to thrive. And part of that is being accessible and approachable, particularly approachable. But once you put your people first, everything else falls in line. We run businesses and there's tough business decisions to be made. But if you can keep your people at the forefront of those decisions, you're going to be rewarded in the long run.
All right, sound advice. Bill Lloyd, president of Great West Engineering. Bill, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering CEO.
My pleasure, Anthony. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Bill. It's really interesting to hear about how mentors can help one in their career, but how you have to be really intentional about finding them, asking them the right questions, and building those mentoring relationships. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to our channel here. We do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.